Hey friends, if you have a UI24 and you need to know how to get your effects into your monitor mixes, I'm going to show you how to do it right now. Let's go! Okay, before we actually get started sending signal anywhere, I just want to simplify what we're looking at. Instead of seeing all these channels, I'm going to turn on a view group so that we're only seeing an input channel, our aux channel, and the effect channel we're going to use. So I'm going to go into view groups and I'm going to use number 5 because that's what I have empty. I'm going to use my test mic, which is on channel strip 7. I'm going to use effect slot 1 and I'm going to use aux 1 for my send to a monitor. Great. With that done, we can turn on view group 5 and now we're only seeing what we want to see. Okay, so I have a microphone here on my channel strip 7. It's physically plugged into 11, and if you didn't already know, channel strips do not have to line up with the physical inputs. I'm using channel strip 7 patched into 11. If I want to change that patch, or if you want to change your patch, you can put any input on any channel strip you want. You just highlight your channel strip, come up to edit, go to patching, and under local you can change it to any physical input. So you can see I'm using 11 on channel strip 7. Just a quick lesson there for you. I've got my master turned down so that if I do bring this up at any point, I know that I'm hearing it out of my monitor and not through my mains. So right now, bring it up, check, 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 1, 2. Great, looks like we have good level. Let's just check the gain. Yep, lots of gain there. Bring it up, check, check, check. I'm not hearing it anywhere. Bring it down. How do we get it into our aux? Oh, look, it looks like we have signal going into the reverb. So let me just turn that off for a second. So we'll start from scratch here. Great, nothing going anywhere. How do we get it into our aux 1? You probably already know, but we'll just go through it anyway. We can come up to the aux send, choose the aux 1, and then pull this up to a reasonable level. I'm going to go to Unity. Is that Unity? That's a little bit high. Sorry, you can't see it. My camera's in front of my screen here, so close enough. Great, so this is how much level we are sending, and you can see that it is set to pre-fader. That means this fader here has no effect on the signal actually going to the aux. You can see I'm already seeing blue signal here. Blue means the signal is present on the bus, but you won't hear it until you actually bring up the associated fader for the output. So yeah, lots of signal going, great, and it is set to pre. You are probably going to want to leave it at pre because if you spend time building a mix for a musician, you don't want anything you change in your main front of house mix to affect the levels you've set. So pre is great. If you want to change that, this is where you do it, but most likely you're going to leave it this way. So we've got it going to the aux. Let's see if we hear it. Bring up the aux master here. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. There it is in the speaker. Awesome. Now we got to get this into our effect. You can do this 2 different ways. So you can click on the effect sends up here, choose the associated effect up here. We're using number 1, and then find your channel strip and bring up the fader. This is now how much level you are sending of this instrument into this effect. The same way to do this, but in another screen, is again, highlight your instrument or microphone fader, go up to edit, choose the effect sends, and you can see now you have a fader for all 4 effect slots. We're using number 1, so I'll bring this up. This is exactly the same as doing it in the other screen, just we'll do it here for this demonstration. This is also where you can change pre and post, and we'll talk about that in a second. So look, we are getting signal to our aux. We are not seeing signal here because it is in fact set to post. So this has to come up if we want to see signal here. And let's bring this up so we can hear our dry signal. And because we are now sending level into here, let's bring this up. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Well, hey, we're not hearing this effect. Why? Because we didn't send the effect to our aux yet. So let's go back to our aux. Under aux 1, we're going to bring this up as well. Same thing to about Unity. And now if we bring this back up and let's bring this up, Check, 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 1, 2, check, 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 1, 2, check, 1, 2. Great. So that's working so far. Okay, knowing that we have signal in all our locations, our input and our reverb and our aux and also to our mains, let's talk about what happens in our main versus our monitor mix based on our situation here. So I'm going to bring my master up and I'm going to bring up my microphone. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 2, 2. Great, we've got signal there. Now let's bring up our reverb. Check 1, 2, check, check, check. Great, we have microphone going to our mains and we are able to blend in our reverb. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Now I'm going to bring down the microphone. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Perfect, we lose both the dry and the wet signal in front of house. That's a good scenario. So now let's bring our aux up at the same time. Okay, we've got dry signal there already. And I'm going to bring back up the microphone. Check 1, 2, check, check, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And let's pull down the aux for a second. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check, check, check 1, 2, check 2. So we have dry signal and we have wet signal going both to our monitor and to our mains. But what happens with everything up? Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. We've got everything up. What happens if I bring down my microphone fader now? Check 1, 2. Check, check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. We've lost dry signal in the mains. We've lost wet signal in the mains. We've lost wet signal in the monitor, but we still have dry signal in the monitor. So you might say, okay, that sounds pretty good, except that let's imagine I'm the vocalist and I'm going to speak to the audience between songs. Well, to do that, I need my microphone to be live. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. I'm just going to kill the mains for a second. Check 1, 2. I'm going to pull down the reverb. Check 1, 2. Uh-oh, I'm still hearing reverb in my monitor. That's not ideal. So how do we combat this situation? Well, you might think, what if you just mute the reverb? Let's try that. It's muted, check, check, check. I'm still hearing it. If you want that to be your answer, you need to go into your settings and under the global tab, you want to choose aux send mute inheritance, which is off by default, but you want to turn it on. And then if we come back out, the reverb is actually muted in both the mains and in the monitor, which is great. So it means if I'm speaking to the audience, they don't hear reverb, and I'm also not hearing reverb in my monitor in between songs. That's ideal. So I should point out right now that this doesn't seem like too bad a setup or a situation, but if you've got a whole bunch of channels and maybe you've got multiple effects going, at the end of a song, you might have to, pull down the reverb instead of just snapping it off and then muting it. And if you're doing that for 4 effects all at once, that could get cumbersome. It could take up time that maybe you just don't have in a live mix. In a situation like that, what I would recommend is creating a mute group for your effects. So you can come over here to mute groups, hold that button, and then you could assign all of your effects to that mute group. Then all you need to do is after your song, instead of pulling all the faders down and then trying to find all the mute buttons, check, 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 you just hit mute group and it mutes all your effects all at once. So that's a little bit easier way of managing your duties at front of house if you do have a setup where you're running all of your effects to both front of house and to your monitors. At this point, you might be asking, okay, cool, this is all workable, but because I've got mute groups for muting everything in both places, wonderful, but what do I do if I have to modify the amount of reverb that's going to someone's monitor during a show? What if they're asking for less and I'm busy doing other things? Where do I go if I've got, maybe I've got a full screen open with all my faders and I'm trying to cycle back and forth? Where's the quick way to go to modify that level? Oops. So the quick place to go to modify the amount of reverb that's going to your monitor, let's just go back to mute groups, turn this on for a second. You can hear that it's going and this is down. we're going to go back into our aux send, and here's the amount of level that's going to your monitor. So I can pull this down, check, 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 and that decreases, or check, 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 increases the amount that's going. So if you're in the middle of a song, instead of scrolling back and forth, if you just quickly jump into your aux sends, choose the aux you're dealing with, and then start to dial down that pre-fader send that's going into the aux. That's how you get to it quickly. Okay, at this point, I'm going to jump back just a little bit because there's something we looked at but didn't actually talk about. And that is, with our test mic highlighted, we're going to go into Edit, and here under the Effects Send tab, it is this pre-post button for our reverb. If you are sending your effect to both your front of house and your monitors, you're probably not going to want to change this. But if you have the resources available, meaning you have a small enough mix or you're not using all of your effects for the whole band, and you can dedicate your effect, one of your effects, to just your monitors, well, then you might want to consider switching this to pre. And now let's look at what that's done for us. I've got everything turned down, so I'm going to grab my microphone here, and I'm only going to bring up my my monitor fader. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Well, we've got everything there. We've got dry and we've got wet while both of these are down. And that's happening because we just told this microphone to go pre-fader into the effect. And if we look at our aux send for aux 1, both the microphone and the effect are going pre-fader to the aux. So this is going pre-fader to here. It's also going pre-fader to here. And then this is also going pre-fader to here. So by turning this up, check, check, you now have everything you need without these faders needing to be touched. But then you're going to say, James, okay, great. We don't have to touch those faders, but how do we actually balance these two signals inside our monitor mix? Well, then you would come up to your aux send button, and this is where you balance those signals. So let me turn this up. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Come into the aux. I'm going to pull these down, and then I'm going to bring them up one at a time. So here's the dry signal. Check, 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 check. Nice level. Now we bring up the reverb to blend in with that dry signal. Check, 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 1, 2. Check 1, 2. And that's where you would control the two levels for a nice blend for your musician on stage. So does this even make sense to do? It wasn't really giving us all that much difference from the way we were doing it before. Anytime you have the ability to separate something for the people on stage from what's happening in the front of house mix, it's definitely something to consider doing. Speaking about this in particular, let's just look at our pre and post here. By switching it to pre, because we know we're not sending it to front of house, what that does is it allows us to actually change settings inside the effect that we're using. If you're sharing an effect between front of house and monitors, if you find that you need to change something, maybe the arrival time of the delay or the bass or the low pass filter or something, if you need to change it because it's just not working right out at front of house, you're also changing those parameters for the person on stage, and that might not work for them. So if you have the ability to dedicate your effect just for the monitor, then you have the ability to change parameters for them on stage, and in your different effect, you have the ability to change the parameters for front of house. It would always be my recommendation to split things between the two locations if you have the resources to do it. I understand you might have a big mix and you might not be able to do that. So in those cases, just work through what we've already talked about, and you should be able to get yourself something pretty workable for both locations. So that's it. We're at the end. I hope this was interesting, entertaining, educational, and if it was any of those three things, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. You can also check us out on Patreon, or you could join the channel down below, or even do a super thanks down below. And I actually want to mention, because a whole bunch of people keep emailing me and asking me, yes, I do have one-on-one tutorials. You can actually join my Patreon for free, and then inside Patreon in my shop, I have some one-on-one tutorials that you can purchase, and we'll do a video chat, and I'll talk you through things step by step if that's something you're interested in. I just wanted to throw that out there because there has been interest in doing that. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time here on QuickEZ. Bye.